Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Racing Minds podcast. This week, we're going to talk about the Brazilian Grand Prix 2024. And was that amazing? I mean, ఒక డే అంతా ఫార్ములా వన్ చూస్తున్నట్టు అనిపించింది నాకు హాఫ్ డే అంతా. Qualifying itself was 2.5 hours. Unbelievable, almost 2.5 hours. And with so many crashes, and thankfully, ఎవరికి పెద్ద పెద్ద ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ అయితే రాలేదు in terms of, drivers not being not that injured thanks to the safety that has been built by the FIA, that has been built by the teams around the cars. Very happy for that. And coming to the race, it was close to a 3-hour race on pitch. 3 hours దాటిందేమో కూడా. And కావాల్సిన డ్రామా, overtaking, it had everything. And most importantly, when I was race స్టార్ట్ చేసే ముందు నేను ఇంకా నారిస్ గెలిచేస్తాడేమో, వరల్డ్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్స్ అండ్ డ్రైవర్స్ ఛాంపియన్షిప్ మొత్తం మారిపోయే అవకాశం చాలా ఎక్కువ కనిపించింది రేస్ స్టార్టింగ్లో. బట్ టువర్డ్స్ ది ఎండ్, యూ ఆల్ నో హౌ ఇట్ వెంట్. లెట్స్ గో అహెడ్ అండ్ రివ్యూ హౌ ద రేస్ వెంట్. స్టార్టింగ్ విత్ FIA. ఎస్, సో FIA గురించి ఫస్ట్ నేను ఏం మాట్లాడదలుచుకున్నానంటే, వెన్ డిడ్ దే హ్యావ్ ద రెడ్ ఫ్లాగ్ ఇన్ Q2 సెషన్ ఎస్పెషల్లీ. క్రాష్ జరిగింది లాన్స్ స్ట్రోల్ది. టువర్డ్స్ అబౌట్ 1 minute 36 seconds ఉంది అనగా క్రాష్ జరిగింది, yellow flags వచ్చాయి. ఇట్స్ క్లియర్లీ విజిబుల్ టు ద రేస్ డైరెక్టర్. దే కెన్ సీ ద కార్, దే కెన్ సీ వేర్ ద కార్ ఇస్. బట్ ఫర్ సమ్ రీజన్ దే టుక్ 40 to 50 seconds టు పుట్ అవుట్ అ రెడ్ ఫ్లాగ్. కారణం ఏమిచ్చారు? మిగతా టీమ్స్, మిగతా డ్రైవర్స్ హు ఆర్ యాక్చువల్లీ ఆన్ హాట్ ల్యాప్, వీఆర్ గివింగ్ దెమ్ అ ఛాన్స్ టు ఫినిష్ ద ల్యాప్ అని చెప్పి. In that case, why not give the same chance to Max, same chance to Perez? Because వాళ్ళు కూడా ఆ టైంలో they were on their hot laps. Especially Max, I don't think his sector 1 was so good in the Q2 final run. But at least he was trying to do the best he can. But సరిగ్గా అప్పుడే రెడ్ ఫ్లాగ్ ఇచ్చారు. So that Max and Perez were knocked out of Q2. And Max, as we know, had a 5-place grid penalty. ఎందుకంటే he was taking a new power unit, a few components changed, so he got a 5-place grid penalty. So he finished qualifying in 12th, which means he would be starting the race in 17th, which was a nightmare. If you're contending for the world championship, world drivers championship కోసం రేస్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు P17 స్టార్ట్ చేస్తే ఎక్కడ ఫినిష్ అవుతాం? But yeah, we will come to that as well. And to me, that kind of felt unfair. రెడ్ ఫ్లాగ్ వెంటనే రిలీజ్ చేయొచ్చు, ఆర్ దే షుడ్ హ్యావ్ let other drivers finish their laps as well. Neither of which happened. So something to watch out. And ఇంకోటి ఆలోచిస్తే రేస్ స్టార్టప్లో లాన్స్ స్ట్రోల్ beached his car in the formation lap. Then they had an abandoned start. And when you have that, there is a particular procedure to be followed. చాలా తక్కువ మంది డ్రైవర్స్ దే స్టిల్ స్టేడ్ ఆన్ ద గ్రిడ్ బికాస్ దే వర్ వెయిటింగ్ ఫర్ అ సో కాల్డ్ గ్రీన్ లైట్ విచ్ హ్యాడ్ టు కమ్, దెన్ దే కెన్ గో హెడ్ అండ్ రీజాయిన్ ద ట్రాక్ ఫ్రమ్ ద బిగినింగ్. బట్ డ్రైవర్స్ స్టార్టింగ్ విత్ నారిస్ అండ్ ఫ్యూ అదర్ డ్రైవర్స్, వాళ్ళు వెంటనే వెళ్ళిపోయారు సో దట్ దే కెన్ ఫినిష్ దర్ ల్యాప్ అండ్ కమ్ బ్యాక్ అండ్ సిట్ ఇన్ దర్ గ్రిడ్ పొజిషన్స్. దిస్ ఇస్ స్లైట్లీ అగేన్స్ట్ ద రూల్స్. దీనికోసం దే యాక్చువల్లీ పుట్ ఇన్వెస్టిగేషన్ ఆన్ అ ఫ్యూ ఆఫ్ ద డ్రైవర్స్, అండ్ రిజల్ట్ ఎప్పుడో వచ్చింది రేస్ అయిన తర్వాత, అండ్ నో పెనల్టీస్. దే వర్ గివెన్ €5,000 ఫైన్ అండ్ రెప్రిమాండ్. అదే మ్యాక్స్ చేస్తుంటే అదే ఫైన్ అండ్ అంతే పెనల్టీ ఇచ్చేవారా, జస్ట్ రిప్రిమాండ్ ఇచ్చేవారా మీరు అనుకుంటున్నారా? ఐ డోంట్ థింక్ సో, బట్ విల్ నెవర్ నో. దాట్స్ విత్ ది FIA antics. Coming to the actual race. And wasn't that amazing, guys? Like, start to finish, it had something or the other. Towards the last 10-15 laps, when everything kind of stabilized a bit, I actually wanted to stay that way. ఎందుకంటే అప్పటికే నేను అంతా ఏమేం జరిగిందో కన్జ్యూమ్ చేసుకోవడానికే మనకి చాలా టైం పట్టేసింది. సో మెనీ క్రాషెస్, సో మెనీ డ్రైవర్స్, సో మెనీ ఓవర్టేక్స్, ఓ మై గాడ్, చాలా చాలా జరిగాయి. అండ్ రేస్లో కీ పాయింట్స్ డిస్కస్ చేసుకోవాలంటే మ్యాక్స్ వెర్స్టాపెన్. Yesterday it was a Max Verstappen masterclass. He showed us why he's a 3-time world champion on his way to become a 4-time world champion. And it was quite amazing. One of the best drives in Brazil for me ante Sebastian Vettel, when he was going on his title bid, more than 10 years ago, 2012 అనుకుంటా, where he spun out early in the race and he had to come back from last position to somewhere in P4 so that he can get the world championship. And 2021 Brazil, where Lewis Hamilton showed a masterclass in overtaking in the dry conditions. And what Max did today, Lewis did that in 2021 and he did it to Max, and it was one of the best races I have seen. And Dan Tarvata, one of the best displays of a driver, the talent, the ability was yesterday. Unna rain, unna conditions, unna position, he was such a controlled and aggressive driver, Max. I mean, P17 lonely, you don't want to go crashing into cars right away because you know you're contending for the world championship, and కొన్ని పాయింట్లు రావాలన్నా at least you got to be in the race. And Max was. Start of the race, especially in turn 1, పెద్ద పెద్ద ట్రైస్ ఏం చేయలేదు, సింపుల్గా స్లైట్గా టర్న్ 1 నుంచి ఎవరిని గుద్దకుండా బయటకు వచ్చామో అని చూసుకున్నాడు. అండ్ టర్న్ 3 అరౌండ్ ది అవుట్ సైడ్ హీ గాట్ పాస్ట్ ఐ థింక్ like 3 cars. Overall by the end of lap 1 he crossed 6 cars. From P17 he came all the way to P11 and he was driven, he was on a mission yesterday. ఏది ఏమైనా సరే ఇవాళ ఐఎమ్ గోనా విన్ అన్నట్టే నడిపాడు అనిపించింది ఫస్ట్ నుంచి లాస్ట్ వరకు. The overtakes he made all through the way, and one specific overtake which I kind of giggled up was on Oscar Piastri. 2021లో పెరెస్ ఏం చేశాడో అది ఇక్కడ ఆస్కర్ పియాస్ట్రీ చేస్తాడేమో అనిపించింది. లైక్ he will be asked and he will be given the task to hold off Max Verstappen so that Lando Norris can go ahead and build his lead. But Oscar was like left the door wide open. వెళ్తారా, హాయిగా వెళ్ళిపోండి, నో ప్రాబ్లం అన్నట్టే వదిలేశాడు. సో I kind of giggled up, but it was an excellent racecraft by Max. And as he was climbing up the ranks, there was another crash by Colapinto and there was a red flag. Before the red flag, Lando and Russell pitted. So Max essentially was ahead of Lando by the time of the red flag and he gets a free pit stop. And from there was no turning back. He was right behind Esteban Ocon, which he overtook him after the second safety car. Red flag తర్వాత ఫస్ట్ సేఫ్టీ కార్ కాక ఇంకో సేఫ్టీ కార్ వచ్చింది. ఆ సేఫ్టీ కార్, సెకండ్ సేఫ్టీ కార్ తర్వాత he overtook Ocon and he won the race by 19 plus seconds. Starting P17, challenging for the world championship, coming back all the way to P1 is such an exceptional performance by Max. 2016లో Max ఆల్మోస్ట్ సిమిలర్గానే చేశాడు బ్రెజిల్లోనే. దేర్ హీ షోడ్ వై హీస్ సో గుడ్ అండ్ దట్ హీ ప్రూవ్డ్ హీస్ సో గుడ్. అండ్ yesterday he showed why he's a 3-time world champion and worthy of becoming a 4-time world champion. So credits and huge props to Max Verstappen. And as we are talking about Red Bull, ఒక్క చిన్న పాయింట్ ఏంటంటే Sergio Perez. 5 cars were out of the race. 2 cars were kick Sauber. Both of the cars ఉన్నా లేనట్టే అలాగే ఉంది వాళ్ళ రేస్. దే డిడ్ంట్ మేక్ ఎనీ మిస్టేక్స్, దే డిడ్ంట్ క్రాష్, బట్ దే డిడ్ంట్ మేక్ అప్ పాయింట్స్ ఈవెన్ ఆన్ సచ్ అ హెక్టిక్ వీకెండ్. యూ ఫీల్ సారీ ఫర్ దెమ్. And Fernando Alonso was sandwiched between these 2 cars, between the kick Saubers. And there was a Haas. ఇవే ఉన్న కార్లు. And Sergio Perez still managed to score 0 points. To me, which is shocking. First lock spin అయింది కరెక్టే, but he didn't really make up any positions. It was quite surprising to see him finish with 0 points even after such a chaotic Grand Prix. So make of it what you will, but there definitely needs to be a better performance in the second Red Bull. ఎందుకంటే ఇప్పుడు సెకండ్ రెడ్ బుల్ వల్ల ఐ థింక్ దే ఆర్ లూజింగ్ ద వరల్డ్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్స్ ఛాంపియన్షిప్. The next one, McLaren. Have they bottled it? ఆలోచించండి. They were given a P1 and P3 at the start of the race. For some reason, they came out P7. And so, like, at this point, it's like they have lost the World's Drivers' Championship. Then claim అయితే కంప్లీట్గా కోల్పోయారు. Norris, again, I won't... For race 1, lap 1, you know that at the start of the races, Lando sometimes or most of the times has lost his position by end of lap 1. నేను కూడా అదే జరిగింది. I wasn't very surprised, but I was like, okay, maybe he has the pace. But ఒకటైతే ఇవ్వాలి, props to Lando Norris and McLaren that అంత chaotic qualifyingలో కూడా they come out on top with no mistakes. Credit needs to be given where it's due. But Lando Norris, he kind of was in P2 for most of the time. And after the pit stops, he kind of overtook George Russell. So red flag lakpai unte, maybe he would have had the net lead in the race. But there was a red flag, things are what they are. But then tarvat kuda, I think he had a big issue during one of the safety car restarts where Charles Leclerc was going down the inside of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. He kind of outbraked himself, and turn one he went straight, losing many positions. So these are the kind of mistakes you cannot afford to make when you're going for a championship. But again, he's an excellent driver, nothing to take away from what he has achieved so far or what he has done yesterday. But going from P1 to P7, where your your drivers challenge, Max Verstappen goes from P7 to P1. That shows what is actually required to win a world championship. And Lando probably needs to pick it up, but at this point, I think it's too late. The drivers' championship is pretty much done. ఎందుకంటే లైక్ మ్యాక్స్కి 62 పాయింట్ లీడ్ ఉంది. వన్ ఆఫ్ 3 races అండ్ ఒక స్ప్రింట్ రేస్. 86 points are available. So I don't think Max is going to just throw it all down the drain. And next Las Vegas Grand Prix, if he scores, or if the difference between the points difference between Lando and Max, if it stays about 60 points, Max wins. So I'm pretty sure Max can win the world championship, and at this point the championship bit is done. McLaren need to work on how they can make better decisions, make drivers can perform better, especially when they're under pressure. Because if you're in a world championship, there will be pressure. That's with McLaren. And a few shout out to a few other teams, Kick, Williams and Aston. Williams especially ఆ మెకానిక్స్కి అయితే ఒక నైట్ మేర్ లాగా మొన్న జరిగింది ఒక వీకెండ్. ఆల్ దే వర్ డూయింగ్ ఇస్ రీబిల్డింగ్ కార్స్. ఫస్ట్ క్వాలిఫైయింగ్లో Colapinto and Albon especially a huge crash. Thankfully he's okay, rebuilding their cars. Then Colapinto once again crashing. So one of the cars could not start, the other car could not finish. So a nightmare race for Williams. And Aston Martin, you got to feel sad for those guys. ఎందుకంటే Lance Stroll, he kind of crashed the car in Q2. They had to rebuild his car, and formation lap lone he kind of beached it. First formation lap lo jarigina oka spin ki I don't blame him, because the car is freshly built. You have a new parts. It's not completely the same. You have never driven the car before, and especially the way the car just turned around with the right rear wheel was very weird and pitching. Maybe it's not his mistake completely when the car really turned around, but beaching it in the sand maybe was. He should have taken a different route to join the track. But beaching it was totally on him. So you got to feel sorry for Aston Martin mechanics. And Fernando Alonso, I mean, నిన్న జరిగిన లాంటి రేస్లో I would expect drivers like Alonso, Lewis Hamilton to actually be up front. But for some reason, Alonso, he just couldn't make it with that car. Maybe the car is not good enough. I think Aston Martin's season is down the drain. They just need to wait for next year when Adrian Newey comes and see what they can do. Now, a race of 2 horses for Mercedes. ఎందుకంటే George Russell was at one point leading the race and felt like if there are no major issues, he might as well win it. And on the other hand, you had Lewis Hamilton struggling to overtake into P10 and staying in points. He was fighting with Behrman, Colapinto, and towards the end of the race, he was struggling to overtake Liam Lawson. Otherwise, he would have been P9. So Lewis Hamilton kaithe assalu anukunnattaithe avvaledu race, and he kind of hated the car throughout the weekend. Like he was like this car man antune unnadu. You can hear him. Car was constantly oversteering. He was constantly going into the grass, going off track. That's not typical Lewis Hamilton, especially rain low. Lewis is also one of the masters. You can maybe compare him, Lewis or Max, which one is better? You might not have an answer as to who is the best in rain. Maybe by yesterday alone, maybe it was Max, but Lewis, I really expected a lot more from him in these kind of conditions, but he really, really struggled with the car. Anyways, for Lewis, it's just the last 3 races with Mercedes, and then he's off to Ferrari. So let's see how it goes for the remaining of the season. George Russell, he did a very good performance, deserved kind of a podium, but it is what it is. Coming to the most special thing happened yesterday after Max, Alpines. I mean, ఇంతకుముందు పాడ్కాస్ట్లో కూడా చెప్పే ఉంటాను, లైక్ యూ కెన్ ఫర్గెట్ అబౌట్ దిస్ టీమ్, దట్ ప్రిటీ మచ్ నాట్ డూయింగ్ ఎనీథింగ్, దట్ టువర్డ్స్ ది ఎండ్ ఆఫ్ ది the grid every race they're maybe finishing not in the points. So I was like, this team is done, you can forget about him అన్నదానికే వచ్చాను. బట్ ద డ్రైవర్స్ ఒక్క తప్పు చేయలేదండి. వెదర్ ఇట్స్ క్వాలిఫైయింగ్, వెదర్ ఇట్స్ రేస్, ద పిట్ క్రూ, నన్ ఆఫ్ దెమ్ మేడ్ అ సింగిల్ మిస్టేక్ త్రూ అవుట్ ద వీకెండ్. ఇంత కియోటిక్ వీకెండ్లో they remained calm, they did the best they could, not a foot wrong by the drivers, either Gasly or Ocon. In fact, Ocon was leading the race for many laps until it was Max Verstappen who overtook him. And Gasly, second half of the race completely, he was just defending George Russell. George Russell was within DRS distance. In fact, in a DRS ledu, but within 1 second throughout the last part. And Alpine is not a good car, we know it. And Mercedes, on the great car కాకపోయినా, it's pretty good. It has won 3 races this year so far. కానీ George Russell was not able to overtake Gasly. It shows the exceptional drive by both the drivers. And in fact, మీకు తెలిస్తే Gasly and Ocon చాలా పెద్ద రైవల్స్, వాళ్ళకి పర్సనల్ రైవలరీ కూడా ఉంది. అండ్ yesterday during the celebrations, during the interviews, you could genuinely see that వాళ్ళ పర్సనల్ రైవలరీస్ అన్ని పక్కన పెట్టి they enjoyed together as a team. And they did deserve this. Like after the course of last 1.5 year, వాళ్ళ టీంకి వచ్చే ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ కానివ్వండి, లైక్ ద నెంబర్ ఆఫ్ పీపుల్ లీవింగ్ ద టీమ్, పీపుల్ జస్ట్ కంప్లైనింగ్ about the team, about the car, and you can also hear in the background that వాళ్ళ ఇంజన్ కూడా మార్చేయచ్చు to a Mercedes in the coming years. So with all this going around, them getting a podium, 2 podiums, was very, very special. So great job by Alpine. And finally, to top it off, guys, World Drivers' Championship is almost done. Max Verstappen will be a 4-time world champion by the end of this year, and truly well-deserved championship win. Maybe after 2021, this will be his most hard-worked and hard-earned championship this year. And World Constructors' Championship, it is still ongoing. Ferrari is 36 points away from McLaren. So the next 3 races will be very, very crucial to see where will the World Constructors Championship go. మీరే అనుకుంటున్నారు, నా కమెంట్స్ చెప్పండి. అండ్ ఎనీ కామెంట్స్, క్వశ్చన్స్, ఫీడ్బ్యాక్స్, ప్లీజ్ ఫీల్ ఫ్రీ టు లీవ్ దెమ్ ఇన్ ద కామెంట్స్. లైక్, షేర్ అండ్ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయడం అయితే మర్చిపోకండి. థ్యాంక్ యూ గైస్, అండ్ ఐల్ సీ యూ ఆఫ్టర్ ద నెక్స్ట్ గ్రాండ్ ప్రీ.